Let's do this. The Cult podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Kurt Leavins. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, David, everybody out here on the West Coast is talking about the Sedines, but I'm guessing that's not the case in Edmonton.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd feel if a bunch of two hockey players suddenly took over and then there was a vote of agents in Vancouver. No, the Athletic did a poll of agents, hockey agents, about the worst run team in the world. And the Canucks had like almost half of the first place votes. And they promote then from within the organization. Anyway, good luck.
Well, what I can tell you, the Reader's Digest condensed version.
Yeah.
For all the bitching and complaining about the Vancouver Canucks in this marketplace, the Sedines are, and will continue to be revered in this marketplace. It was an easy damage control decision.
Fair enough. Got to sell tickets.
Yep.
All right, Kurt. Speaking of gotta sell tickets, I think it was one of the reasons for the decision today, quite honestly. They needed to make some changes to appease the fan base in Edmonton. I don't know if that worked, but the Oilers have fired coach Kris Knoblauch. What do you think?
Well, as you know, I was on the fence, and I would have been okay with them bringing Knoblock back to begin his extension, but I really felt that they need to repair some things behind the scenes, and I'm sure that we'll get into that when we talk about the reasons for him firing. But you know what, at the end of the day, if Stan Bowman sat there and decided, these problems are too insurmountable, well, then he owes it to the organization to move on, because the clock is ticking. That may not be a popular take, but I think it's probably an accurate one.
Yeah, one of the reporters asked him today if part of it was him wanting his own coach, and he did say that might have factored into it. And this was Kris Knoblauch was a Jackson hire, so we'll see. I just want to say first of all about Kris Knoblauch, he led the team to 2 Stanley Cup Finals.
Yes,
and you could say the Oilers had overwhelming talent. They had good talent, but he led the team to 2 Stanley Cup Finals. And in this day and age, it's about the equivalent of winning a Stanley Cup in 1970. So
difficult to say he didn't push the correct buttons along the way in both of those playoff runs.
He was a breath of fresh air as a coach when he came in. Mm-hmm. I thought it was time for a coaching change. I know people think, there's all these coaches changing. Well, they're changing all the time in the NHL, except in rare circumstances. And it seems like 2 to 3 years is about the shelf life of a coach in the NHL. But the main reason I have for wanting the changes, I just didn't see any. There was an improvement in some individual players this year, but there was an improvement in the team, in team defense, for whatever reason, and there hasn't been, right? These issues, as people are pointing out, have existed for some time, and that didn't improve this year. It looked like it might be trending up, though, and I still had hopes it would get better. And it had to get better because the team's offensive skill isn't going to get better as their star players age. They're going to have to play more of a two-way game in order to win in the playoffs. They've got to transition and to that kind of game. And I didn't see any kind of strong signals that was happening this year. And I just think a coach who specializes in that, and there are at least one, maybe more on the market, is the way to go, in my opinion.
Well, when you look back on the season, I think it's a fact that there were too many facets of the Oilers game not working to allow them to go on any kind of meaningful run. About the only thing that worked all season long with some consistency was the power play. Yeah. Everything else was up and down like a toilet seat. Did he? Yeah, I read some excerpts. I didn't hear the whole avail, but it's a fact, right, David? I mean, you and I saw it game in and game out while we were doing Cult of Hockey player grades. It's like we thought for 2 or 3 games, okay, this is the team we thought they'd be, and then no, they're not. And they couldn't pull out of that tailspin, and some of that is coaching. Some of it's on the players. The coach can't put on the skates. But if you can't mold your players into a consistent functioning unit, a lot of this gets on you.
Kurt, there was a lot of upset in Edmonton over the um, handling, for lack of a better word, handling. I mean,
A lot of hand wringing, if you ask me.
a lot of people are upset, feeling that Knobloch has been mistreated. And the one point that they make is, if they knew they were going to get rid of Knobloch, um, they should have just done that and then looked for a coach. They should have fired him right at the end. So there is that, but it sounds like Bowman today in his press conference says he doesn't like to make rash decisions. He likes to think it through. He doesn't want to make, because if you make a decision in an emotional moment after you've just been eliminated the playoffs, you might make the wrong one. He wanted to actually go through the process of seeing that through. Now, it's pretty clear that during that process, they started to think, well, who are the other options? And they started to explore that a bit as well, which to me is just, that's fact finding. Because if you're going to replace him, you've got to know there's a better candidate or two or three that are out there that might want to come. Why would you get rid of him if you don't have that? So to me, it's all part of the same process of assessing your options for the head coach. And the only difference, as far as I can tell, Kurt, this time is that somebody leaked the fact that the Oilers had asked permission. The Oilers don't control that, who leaks what. So
Vegas.
Could have, we don't even know. Like
That's my bet.
Yeah, who was it saying? Oh, Elliot Friedman, like, who has something to gain from this? And that, I guess, Vegas then upsets the Oilers apple cart. But I just, Kurt, I just don't understand honestly, I don't get the upset at all. It seems like a process everyone goes through, and a process that's gone through. Every NHL team does this regularly. This is business as usual. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I don't mean to paint everybody with the same brush, but for the commentators and people out there who say, "Oh my God, I can't believe the Oilers were talking to other people while Kris Knoblauch was still their coach." How to show you have never worked in or run a big company 101. You always have to have a succession plan with a big company, and the Edmonton Oilers Entertainment Group is a big damn company. It's pretty rich for the people to say, "Oh, you can't be talking to other people." When you are a general manager of a big organization, I've been in one, you're always recruiting. In fact, the owner of your company is usually on you to make sure that you're always recruiting. Even if you're happy with the people in your positions, you got to have bench strength, because shit happens. People leave for all kind of reasons that you don't anticipate. And so if you don't have candidates ready and warm and waiting, you're behind. And if people don't think that every big organization operates that way, they're kidding themselves. In fact, it's gross negligence if they don't. Did this look bad? Sure. But not because they were fishing around seeing if they might have a better option than Kris Knoblauch. It was their damn job to do that. It's just someone leaked it. So did it look shitty? Yeah. But get over it. This is how big companies run.
Probably how little companies run too. It's like, it's
good ones.
It's certainly how, like, I just wonder, have you not followed? Maybe people don't pay too much attention when maybe they don't think about the process. Like, the coach is fired and suddenly, hey, we're same day introducing the new coach. How do you think that happens? And it happens repeatedly.
Well, go to free agency. It's like, surprise, we have so-and-so on a 6-year deal. Really, you did that in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that's all crap. The other thing, David, that I understand is that when Stan Bowman decided that he had to fire Kris Knoblauch, he wanted to do it face-to-face.
Bowman said that,
Yeah, and for all the people who want to bitch and whine about that, well, remember, this is a market where we fired a coach on Zoom.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, so you can't suck and blow at the same time.
So, yeah, I think it was good Bowman wanted to meet him face to face and tell him and talk it out with him. It sounds like that happened.
Be a man, right? It's like, I have no problem with that.
And so I think a lot of the hard feelings is not, it's not about what we're talking about at all. It's mainly there's a group of people who first of all didn't want to see Knobloch fired at all.
And I get
That
that.
includes a lot of people in the media who work day in, day out with Kris Knoblauch, knew him quite well and probably really liked him.
Nice guy,
And
easy to deal
they
with,
don't
right?
like they seem to be they don't like Bowman. So and there's a people in the fan base the same who really lots of people don't like Stan Bowman in the fan base, and there's their sense of justice is offended by what happened. Like the real culprits in the organization, Bowman and Jackson, have gotten off scot free, and the good guy Kris Knoblauch has been fired. I think that's what's driving their overall distaste with what's happened, and rather than just thinking this is business as usual, it's they're seeing it at a different level or in a different way, which doesn't really apply to the decision making process, but it applies to their, if you're looking at it in terms of what's right maybe for the Oilers and what's right in terms of justice here, who should be fired and that kind of thing.
Well, look, when it comes to the fans, who am I to tell people how to fan? If they feel that way, they feel that way, right?
And they do.
Um,
Yeah, they
what I would say is, with all due respect to Kris Knoblauch, he's never won. And last time I checked, Stan Bowman has a Stanley Cup ring. So if you want a winning organization, do you bend over backward to make excuses for your never won coach? Or do you trust your veteran championship quality general manager to pull you out of this tailspin? I know which one I'd pick.
Kris Knoblauch just couldn't get this team on track this year.
It's a
And
fact.
is there, can he do it next year? I don't know. It seemed to be trending down. So anyway, I was good with what happened, and you know, Kris Knoblauch has now got a 3 year deal. He's going to make between, I don't know, I've heard anywhere from $7 to $10 million. So you know,
He'll
he just
coach
went on
again
a
in
lot
this
of his
league.
life, and he's $7 to $10 million richer.
Yeah.
So
Don't you agree, David? He'll coach again in this league.
oh, I think there's a lot of teams that would, if you're looking for that kind of, like the kind of coach that he is, a very, like for young players, let's say, building a team, working with young players, he'd be great.
I
Like
agree.
Toronto, he might be really good in Toronto, for instance. You know, if that team's on a rebuild, or Vancouver, if he
And
wants to
Austin
do it.
Matthews leaves town. Yeah.
Yeah, Matthews might leave.
I always want to throw that in because, Toronto people are so quick to talk about Connor McDavid leaving town. So fair is fair, right?
Well, here's one for you, Kurt.
Hmm.
The Edmonton Oilers have 5 players with more than 1,000 points in an Oilers uniform. The Toronto Maple Leafs have 0.
How about that?
Um, so there's I'll just quickly deal with a few facts about what's going to happen next. It looks like the Oilers, Elliot Friedman reports that they're after Bruce Cassidy. That's their prime target.
Not a
And
big
this is after
surprise, right?
Pierre Lebrun reported this morning that they don't have a target in mind, and they're going to have a process, which was Stan Bowman's story as well. Might be true, but because you don't know. There's also confusion over, like, can Vegas actually block Cassidy? And it sounds like Brian Burke was on, and he talked about this. He's a former NHL executive, very experienced, and he said, "Yeah, you can do it," and it's been done. And but Elliot Friedman was saying he thinks that unless there's a really good reason, Vegas actually can't. On that on that one, I'm going to go with Burke, who is a lawyer and a former NHL executive, and it sounds like you can. But I have to say this, Kurt. Vegas won a Stanley Cup with Bruce Cassidy. He went there to that city. He won. He's a big part of their Stanley Cup.
Hmm.
This year they fired him. They can fire him. That's within their rights. But on earth would be lacking in gratitude so much from a Stanley Cup that they would then block his way? And I know that's the Oiler fan in me saying that too. I'd like Cassidy to come here, but I do think it would be a kind of a despicable act of ingratitude, bringing on real bad karma for whoever who does that. So if they're listening, they should think about that, because why would you do that to Cassidy? He won you a cup and you're going to do that to him? I mean, I know that they're known as ruthless, Kurt, but to me, this would be a whole different level of, stabbing someone in the front who helped you win, hockey's biggest trophy. Probably
Yeah,
bigger than
well,
Winter, but
as you may recall, I've known the McCrimmon family for years, um, and
I didn't recall that. No.
yeah, and knew Brad
Yeah.
extremely well.
Okay.
And I played hockey against Kelly,
Is Brad Kelly's what?
brother.
He's his brother. Okay. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And Kelly and I played intermediate senior hockey against one another. And I'm a little surprised. It's a little unusual that someone from Doddsland, Saskatchewan, um, would would act act in this manner. I gotta say, a little unusual for someone from the upstanding McCrimmon family who I have nothing but respect for.
Could
So
be
it's a little
McPhee though, or the
unusual.
owner.
I think it's more likely that. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, I've had that thought more than once that I think it's the owner that's being pissy because I gotta say, knowing the McCrimmons, this isn't like them. Yeah, they're cutthroat, like they're always trying to win, but they're usually not pissy about it. So
Yeah.
this strikes me as a little out of character for Kelly McCrimmon.
It's a real petty move. Like seriously, if after
Yeah,
firing a guy
yeah,
and then to block,
yeah,
like that's
yeah.
just,
Like can they? Yeah. Now what I can tell you is that non-compete contracts in the last 5 years haven't been worth the paper they've been written on. Whether this is in effect a non-compete, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I've sure had a lot to do with non-compete contracts. And but the problem is you end up in court and you usually end up with a settlement and all that takes time and the Oilers don't have time.
yeah.
That's the problem, right? So
Well, we'll see what happens. It sounds like maybe calmer heads will prevail on this front, but
maybe now that they're through to the next round, that may change the
oh,
evaluation.
did they win tonight?
They did.
Okay.
It wasn't
Well,
close. I think 5-1. I think I saw was the final
yeah,
score.
might put them in a better mood until their first game against Colorado.
They had the game on the ferry, BC ferry, on the way home
Cool.
tonight. So
So, Kurt, before we get into, like, we won't talk that much about Cassidy because we'll have lots of chance to talk about that.
mm-hmm.
I just want to go through, like, I was trying to sort out, you know, the rightness of this decision, figure it out for myself. So I went through all our stories that we did last year
Oh, good.
on the Oilers, and I found like 13 things, which 13 factors which I think actually doomed Knobloch this year. And some of them are his fault, most of them aren't his fault, but they still had a huge impact on him. I just want to run through them with you and see what you think about each one.
Okay.
So the first one is the St. Louis offer sheet to Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. So that impacts, it's just cast a shadow over the whole franchise ever since it happened. It's now pretty clear it was a mistake not to match Holloway at least. I mean, the thought that was in my head tonight, Kurt, is all Jeff Jackson had to do was resist signing Jeff Skinner. Just think, let's go with the young guy Holloway. Resist signing Skinner, who had played his way off the worst team in hockey, Buffalo at the time. And Dylan Holloway would be an Oiler. And it's just like such a colossal mistake. And it has impacted the team. They might have a cup by now, is the truth, if they'd kept Holloway. And it's a tough one. And I think that is one. Now, that was a factor in the two Stanley Cup runs where Knobloch was successful. But you need new players. You need new talent. And man, that's what Dylan Holloway would represent to the Edmonton Oilers and Broberg if they decided to match him as well.
Well, and while I certainly don't heap all of that on the doorstep of Kris Knoblauch, fact of the matter is neither one of those players got the ice time that we and most people thought they should.
Under Knobloch.
So you can't.
But you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can't absolve him of any guilt in that. He was part of the problem, right? Certainly with Philip Broberg, he was, as I understand it, his nose was out of joint because he wasn't playing, and he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Right. And with Dylan Holloway, it seemed like every time he hiccuped on the ice, he sat. Like it really seemed, pretty. We used the word petty already once in this podcast, so I think that whole problem is primarily on Ken Holland, Jeff Jackson, and a little bit of Stan Bowman, but I'm not willing to absolve Kris Knoblauch of that.
Yeah, the further I get away from it, the more I just think Jackson just blew it. He just spent he overspent without having his ducks in a row on those two guys, and man, it's a bad one. All
And
right.
Jeff was in the office when Ken decided,
He
that it
was
wasn't a
Holland's
risk.
boss, right? He could have said,
Yeah, he
do
could
that.
have spoken up and stepped in and did
Yeah.
not. That's
Yeah.
that shouldn't be forgotten.
What's going on with those two contracts, Ken? Have you got
Are
them
you
signed
sure,
yet?
Ken? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then if he wasn't sure, then the second he takes over, do it.
Yep.
Anyway, it's just massive screw up. Okay,
Agreed.
the second one is the signings made this summer of Frederick and Mangiapane. And what that did was, so it's because these two players didn't produce very well, but because they were signed to big contracts from the GM, there was an onus on Knoblock to play these guys in choice positions. Like Frederick started on top six, so did Mangiapane, and to keep trying them, keep trying them, keep trying them. And it led to a fair amount of chaos in the first half of the year, especially until they just kind of gave up on Mangiapane. And that I think was pretty. One of the things that happened, one of the reasons I think this team was inconsistent is there was a lot of turmoil and chaos around the lineup. And this was the biggest part of it. And this was something that Bowman did. He certainly misjudged, and his pro scouts misjudged Mangiapane as a player.
Agreed.
And we were all wondering whether the Frederick, having seen him in the playoffs and how ineffective he'd been, whether that was going to work out. So that's the second thing that doomed Knobloch this year was two big players he had to try to work in who were really hard to work in.
I think Knobloch did his best with Mangiapane. I'm not ready to lay that on him. I think that was the general manager's mistake. And frankly, some of it's on the player. It's all fine and to blame the general manager all the time, but sometimes the players are just crap, right?
Yes.
It's like they don't get a passing grade just because. On the Trent Frederick thing, I gotta say, I think that was probably a sliver of a factor in all this, because Stan Bowman, that's on his reputation, and we talked about this in a previous podcast. They had finally rehabilitated this guy. He was healthy and he was playing the way we all said, hey, this is the Trent Frederick we thought we were getting. Then he made one mistake. Yes, it was a bad one, and bam, he was in the press box. And I'm willing to bet that pissed off the general manager.
Yeah. And when I'm bringing up these points, so I'm not saying they just doomed Knobloch. He's not he's default on some of them, but these are all factors that why they had such a crappy season.
And I totally get that.
Season, let's say.
Yeah.
So the other point number 3, the physical and mental fatigue from 2 long playoff runs. And Kurt, actually last summer, I don't know if you saw my post, but I quoted you, one Kurt Leavins. You raised this last summer as, and I was thinking it too. I might have written on it too. I can't remember, but I did write a post because it was brought up in a podcast that I was listening to. And I've been thinking about it. It's just like, it's not just the physical toll, which was massive, but the emotional, like just to be motivated, to keep going, to keep pushing that hard. It ain't easy to win the Stanley Cup. There's 31 other highly competitive teams. It's just a miracle to get, into the final 4 and then into the final 2, and each round gets harder and it all gets harder. And they've done that 2 years in a row. And I think that was a massive factor. We saw Florida fall apart.
And they won.
Year. And they won.
Right. They didn't have the crushing feeling of defeat when they lost.
Pretty big thing to be up against. What do you think?
Yeah, I think absolutely a factor. I completely agree with that. I find it difficult to blame Kris Knoblauch too much on that, because he was a big part of them getting as far as they were. Ultimately, is it the coach's job to overcome that sort of thing? Yes.
It is. And that is true, Kurt. It's his job to figure out a way to get the rest for the players and to provide if he can provide the motivation, at least the environment and the positive environment to get over it. But so, yeah, he had to fight through that and
didn't find a solution.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. But he was dealt a pretty tough hand. I'll say
part
that.
of it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one where I think he is to blame. His Knobloch's coaching staff cock up of last summer. So they lose Glenn Gulletson, they lose Paul Coffey, 2 really experienced NHL people, right? Like, because Knobloch hasn't been in the NHL. He'd been an assistant coach for a few years, and He had not been an NHL player. In retrospect, he would have been, I think, really wise to hire a veteran NHL coach as his associate coach. And I can't recall who was out there, but there's lots of them, right? There's lots of these coaches that are out there, and Peter Laviolette probably wouldn't want to take the job at that time, but there's Craig McTavish. There's lots of people he could have hired as his sounding board and someone there to help him, and he didn't do that. And the narrative is, and I think there's probably some truth to it, he hired a lot of people just like himself, friendly, super smart, calm hockey technocrats. But it was too much of the same guy, too much of the same vibe, and they missed some fire on that staff, and then it blew up. By November, people like me were writing they should bring back Coffey, and then he's forced to bring back Coffey. Yeah, that's on Knoblock. Big mistake.
In my management career, I was running a big, pretty expensive operation once, and it wasn't going that well. And a mentor of mine came into town and said, well, you know what's wrong, what? And I said, no, if I knew what was wrong, I'd fix it. What's wrong? He said, you hired a bunch of Kurts.
Yeah.
And he was 100% right, and I realized it at that moment. And the problem was either someone didn't say that to me while I was hiring it, or I wasn't smart enough to ask.
Well, it's hard to figure that out, right? Unless you've got experience.
Yeah.
And as McTavish says, experience is what you get 5 minutes after you need it.
Yeah. I think everybody was saying that Kris Knoblauch had earned the right to choose his own coaching staff. But I think some of this gets on the general manager, because the general manager at some point has to say, Kris, I know you want this, but this is going to be a problem. Now, who's the boss at the end of the day? It's not the coach, it's the general manager, right?
Yeah. And I don't know I actually don't know the personalities of the people that he hired. Like maybe they're fire-breathing dragons.
From what I understand, it's a pretty chill room.
All right. Okay. Number 5, Bowman and Knobloch conflict over which players to play. And Bowman downplayed this today, but he did say there was some he didn't agree with. A lot of this would just be normal disagreement between the boss, like two people trying to work it out between them on some pretty important and big decisions.
Yeah.
And there might have been times when, like, okay, you got to get Andrew Mangiapane in the line. Like, I don't like Bowman. So Bowman said he never told him who to play, and he gave a good reason for it. He said, if I tell him that and he plays him, then I need to hold the coach accountable for coaching. And if I suddenly become the coach, then how can I rate the coach on accountability? It screws up the whole process of the lines of authority. And so that was actually, I thought, an excellent thought from Bowman.
And Ken Holland used to say the same thing.
He did, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. Like, that's bright. Like, that's if you're managing that way. Mm-hmm. I've not been a manager, right? So this is all Greek to me, but that seemed to make a lot of sense.
But Kris also isn't stupid. He knows that Bowman, signed these guys. It did strike me that as time wore on, there wasn't very effective communication between the two. I'm not going to suggest that they didn't talk, but it's pretty clear they had a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
Trent Frederick, Andrew Mangiapane, Jake Wallman. Those are 3.
Well, maybe Bowman was against the coach playing Darnell Nurse so much in the playoffs. Oh, no, that was me.
That was you.
That was me.
Maybe you'll be the new head coach of the Edmonton Oilers.
God. Oh, God. Not for all the tea in China. Not that they ever would. Number 6. Way too many new players this year all year. And I think actually this is like the underrated one. Like, people don't mention this, but I think it's huge. So of their wingers that were in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the 10 wingers who played in the playoffs, only 7 of them were back, or 7 of them were new this year. And
Zach Hyman missed half the year.
Zach Hyman missed like at the start of the year. So yeah, he's included in that. They had 7 new faces. That's a lot of churn. And then it continued, Kurt, through the year. Like there was so much turnover. And I just think, again, chaos does not lead to consistency. And all of these new players at the start of the year and all these new players throughout the year, like an unusual amount of players, new players for a team that's such a good team. It was a real year of change, and it happened in part because they were so pressed up against the cap, which had been static for a long time, and they have 4 or 5 guys who earn so much money. They didn't have a lot of money to work with, so they were just scrambling the whole year to figure it out. And then Mangiapane doesn't work, and they're scrambling some more. It was one big scramble from beginning to end, and I think it doomed Knobloch. He's got to manage all that, but that's hard. And all the new line combinations, he was getting hell at the start of the year for all these. He's just trying to find something that works with all these new players. And one of the reasons Bob Stauffer says, well, it'd be nice. Stauffer says he's gone, or is that it'd be nice, to have the same lines day to day. Maybe as the year went on, he could have done better with that, but he didn't. I just think it was too much churn, and it's not really that's on the coach to some extent, but not really.
My opinion is you're being generous.
Okay.
It not only did it seem like, and injuries notwithstanding, because those aren't Knobloch's fault.
Yeah.
Injuries notwithstanding, not only did it seem like we had a different lineup, different lines and pairings and starting goaltender every night, it kind of felt like we had a different lineup, lines, pairings, and goaltenders every bloody period. Like it was like the general manager started the churn, and then the coach just kept stirring the pot. I really think that Kris Knoblauch displayed a lack of patience.
That's interesting, Kurt. I can't disagree with you. I think you're right about it. Nonetheless, that many new players. Wow. Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, it worked, so let's change it, right? Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Anyone, I do this grade A shots metrics, and anyone who was below the team's average, as soon as you were below the team's average, it's almost like it seemed like they were getting rid of players. They were just, you're out. You're done. Like there's hardly, you look at my chart and everyone below like the team average for the whole year, they're all gone except for Frederick, who had that big contract.
It's like in the cartoons we used to watch when the kid where the rock falls on the coyote. It's like, you're done.
Well, it's like the car dealership story where the lowest salesman gets fired every month. That's what the Oilers were this winter, Kurt. They fired the lowest selling car salesman every month, and like
that ain't a myth.
They did.
I work for a man who owns one of the biggest car dealerships in Canada. That ain't a myth.
All right. Point number 7, Knobloch himself at times failed to reward players who had done well. And this was a real sticking point with fans, even though it might seem like a small thing, but happened with a couple players. Noah Philp early in the year gets taken out.
It's the one off the top of my head.
And they screwed up all the lines. Happened later to Curtis Lazar a couple times. It happened to Ike Howard once. Just as players had a good game, they were taken out. It's like, what? Who does that? Like, it stands out, even though it's a small thing, usually 4th line guys. It stands out because usually coaches don't do that.
Yeah.
And maybe it goes to your point that Knobloch himself, who comes across as so calm and collected, was a little impatient and
itchy trigger finger
around too much.
We made a point at one point in the partway through the season how the Oilers had a superior winning record with Curtis Lazar in the lineup.
Yes.
Not that Curtis Lazar was stirring the drink, but it was, you couldn't ignore it, right? Apparently Kris could.
Yeah.
Just like poor old Noah Phillips, he's first star. You're out.
The 8th thing that doomed Kris Knoblauch this year was the crazy busy travel in October and November. And he mentioned finally when they got some practice days in early December, the team started to play better. And he said, we just haven't had practices. So at the time, it came up a lot. It was mentioned a lot. And I think there's something to it. It was a compressed schedule because of the Olympics. And all of the Oilers' major travel seemed to be happening in the first half of the year, and especially October, November. So I think that sure didn't help. The team got off to a weak start. It had all these new players. They quickly got tired, and the team didn't have a lot of time to practice and get things down. So now that's something the coach has got a plan for, right? He's got to work on his systems play a little bit earlier, maybe get those things going. But So it's part of that's on the coach. I'm not saying he didn't handle it, but it was also something he had to handle, which was tough.
Well, what I will say is in the playoffs, the Oilers had to cover more kilometers in the air than any other NHL team.
Except
That
Anaheim.
except Anaheim, but they're in the same series,
Yeah,
right?
but they had traveled. They had one extra travel day because they had to travel at Edmonton. Like they were catching.
Yeah,
Like the Oilers were ahead of them the whole way.
yeah. But just in terms of pure
Yeah,
miles,
yeah.
right? And that's and on one hand, the coach is one of the guys in the organization that has to manage that, but that's a difficult thing to overcome, right? It's and
The
from what I
ninth.
understand, the Oilers spare no expense to make sure that the Oilers travel well and are cared for extremely well. Like they pay a lot of attention to that kind of stuff.
I think
So
it's one of the strengths of Daryl Cates as an owner.
yes,
The ninth reason Knobloch was doomed: teams' inconsistency in finding their A defensive and puck possession game. And this is the reason that I would have fired Knobloch, and it did doom him. His inability to get this team. He had a vision. He articulated it a few times. He's not always articulating it, but he wanted them to move the puck well, move the puck smartly, and he wanted a sound defensive game. And this team just didn't bring it consistently at all. And they had one hope when they started to get injuries, and that was like that everybody would just buckle down on defense like never before and play their positions, cover their man. The Oilers just never were good at that. They haven't. They were better at it in the previous two playoffs.
yes.
They were never good at it this year for long stretches of games, and that's really concerning if you're the GM of the team. Like this coach doesn't seem to be able to get these players to comply to his vision. Is the bottom line. I got to bring in someone who's going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of evidence that his voice just wasn't being effective anymore. Right. I think that was probably the bottom line. Um, you know, systems they cut both ways. You have to have the right system, and the players have to play the system. Well, if the players don't believe in the system to begin with, and I think there's evidence of that as well, that's also a problem. Like that 1-2-2 neutral zone formation just got picked apart by Anaheim in the playoffs. It was a bloodbath. It wasn't close. And if there was a pivot, boy, I couldn't tell, David. If there was a change in their defensive structure, it was so subtle, I couldn't tell with the naked eye. At the end of the day, these are professional hockey players, and they should be able to play the system that you coach them to play. But the Edmonton Oilers aren't the Jacques Lemaire New Jersey Devils either. If you're expecting them to be a bunch of defensive wizards, I think you've got the wrong team. The Oilers need to play as good a defense as we saw them play in the playoffs over those two seasons to give their offense a chance to be the difference maker. And it didn't do it this year. You halfway through this season, you and I started saying, "Boy, I don't know if this team's going to defend well enough," and sure enough, they couldn't.
Number 10, same old over reliance on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They started out the year on the same line together, and finally Knobloch moved away from that, and they started to play better. But in the playoffs, they got a lot of ice time again this year, probably a minute more than was wise. And then they were on the PK in the playoffs, and I just thought, this is madness. First of all, you need in the playoffs, you need to block shots. You need players out there blocking shots. But you don't want Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl blocking shots on the PK. And the fact that they were out there, I just thought, oh, what is going on? And they were terrible. Like they McDavid actually at even strength wasn't that. His defensive play was solid enough in the playoffs for a guy skating with a fracture in his leg or ankle. But on the PK, he was not. He was out of position. He's not skilled and drilled enough on the PK to be very effective, honestly. So that's the next thing.
Well, you know what I've often said, so I'm not going to be hypocritical by changing it now. I've often said you want to lose with your best players on the ice. I believe that. I've always believed that. I'll believe that tomorrow. So I'll defend Kris Knoblauch on that point. However, where I'll agree with you is that in the playoffs, once Connor McDavid was clearly compromised physically, I would have taken him off the penalty kill because I just didn't think the guy was physically able to do the job, willing but not able, right? And I do think that was a tactical error. And here's another angle which we haven't talked about yet. Maybe McDavid insisted on going out there. Tough shit, man. That's where you need a coach who is confident enough in his own decision making to look at your superstar in the eyes and say, "No, you're not."
Yeah.
And I think that's where Kris Knoblauch didn't have enough command of this dressing room, and I think that's why they're looking for a head coach with, what did Bob say in his post? Gravitas? Is that the word that he used?
Yes.
That's what he's trying to say, and I haven't even asked Bob if that's what he was trying to say. They need someone who can look Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid in the eyes and go, no. And good players want that, man. They want to be challenged. They don't want to be the coaches. They want to be the players, right?
You've got to get the players to play your system as the coach. You've got to do that. They've got.
But if they didn't think it was the right system,
yeah,
they as much said so in their season-ending avail, right?
Number 11, Edmonton's goalie simply failed to get the job done. I think that's
guilty as charged.
We talk about that very much.
Yeah, that ain't Chris's fault.
Number 12, cascading chaos bubbled up and never went away, as seen by McDavid and Draisaitl outbursts. So this is like all these things coming together, and it seemed like there was a fair amount of turmoil with this team. It's really unusual for players to speak out about the coaching, even though McDavid's comment was he was complimenting another coach, so it was fairly benign on a certain level. But Draisaitl's was pretty pointed, and everyone kind of applauded him. But nonetheless, it is very rare for that kind of comment to be made. And I just think there's so much going on, so much chaos that it just came bubbling out in the end, and certainly in the end of year interviews as well. It's just you can't have that on your team, and they did have it on their team.
The root of chaos is often stubbornness. And at many points along the season, I thought I saw a stubborn Kris Knoblauch. And as I am led to believe, that was the case in certain situations behind the scenes as well. And I know there's been articles written about how Knoblock would be given like statistical facts, analytics saying, don't do this with this guy, and he'd march him out there anyway. Now, you have to give a coach a certain amount of latitude and let him play by his gut and his instinct. But at some point, if you have an analytics department, what are you paying him for?
I'll just wait till they get a hold of Bruce Cassidy, who refers to the analytics guys as the nerds. And he says he uses them to chart how the team's going over 10 game stretches.
There was lots of evidence Kris used analytics too, but it seemed like he sometimes used them when it was convenient.
The final killer was the injuries in the playoffs. There was a moment right at the end of the year where it looked like the Oilers were getting over many of these things I've talked about, that we've just talked about, and were finding their A game, inching towards it. Draisaitl gets hurt. Hyman gets hurt in March. Both have to sit out. McDavid and Dickinson gets hurt then late in the year. Max Jones gets hurt. A good fourth line energy player that they could have used. And then McDavid gets hurt. And then Bouchard gets a little bit hurt too. Now,
Ingram got tweaked.
Today said he didn't play concussed. He was adamant about that. But he was nonetheless banged up. So it's a lot of injuries to your best players, and you're not going to win with McDavid unable to cut, make his sharp cuts. It's such a big part of his game. It's how he commands the game, is by being able to shed attack defenders and find time and space with the puck to make his plays. Leon was the same. He was having a hard time puck protecting. He's just the best puck protector in the NHL probably right now, or one of them. And we didn't see him taking on defensemen that much. He just wasn't able to do it. So it was huge, Kurt. And it was sad. It was a sad way for Knobloch to go out because he's got to feel a little cheated, I think. Like, damn, just as we were so close,
Hmm.
just as I was, my plan was coming together finally,
Hmm.
and it's taken away by injury.
Yeah, I feel for Kris on this one because there ain't much he could do about that. And maybe you can survive if one of either McDavid or Draisaitl is
Yes.
compromised, but when both of them are, that's tough, man. And Draisaitl still produced. He was leading
Oh yeah,
he
yeah.
was leading
He
the
always
playoffs
does.
in points for quite a while,
He's an
but he
amazing player.
wasn't, even he said he didn't have the pop that he normally does, right?
Yeah.
So that's tough, man. And even, Jake Wallman was great in the playoffs, but it seemed like Wallman was hurt half the year too. So I mean, it was, yeah, well, it just felt like the injury bug was conspiring against them. You know, and
The
there are
more,
some people say, this is an excuse. Yeah, but it's also a reason,
yeah.
right?
I was always hopeful about this Oilers team, but having watched Colorado in the playoffs, that team is, what do they call it, a wagon.
They
That
certainly
team,
dispatched of Minnesota without too much trouble, didn't they?
the Oilers weren't beating that team this year. They are so fast. And they got a bunch of guys like, there's a guy, this Parker Kelly. And you look at him, he was like a second line winger in the WHL and like no hell as a AHL hockey player. And he just comes and he's buzzing around the ice. He's fierce. He's fast. Like the Oilers have got to find one or two guys like that this summer. And Max Jones might have been. He was starting to play like that all of a sudden,
Mm.
right? Like it's amazing. And I'm just bringing up Kelly because we all know what the really good guys on that team can do. They're just astonishing. But they have a
Yeah,
bunch of other guys that are,
yeah.
that are kind of no-name guys who are incredibly. That team plays such fast hockey.
See, on the speed front, just to stop on that point for a second, I don't think the Oilers' trouble was speed. I don't buy that for a second. And when you look at the NHLA statistics, they were one of the fastest teams in the league. You can argue they didn't play fast at
Pace
times.
of play. That's what I'm talking about,
Two
Kurt.
different things,
Yeah.
because if people are saying, "Oh, Anaheim's so much faster than the Oilers." Well,
No.
Anaheim was way faster than Vegas too, and they didn't give Vegas much of a fight,
Yeah. No,
right?
it's the pace of play. That's what's. It's like this. It's a
Yeah.
blitzkrieg. They're moving so fast, making plays so fast. And I'm glad to see Brett Kulak part of it. He's such a great hockey player, especially
I'm
in the
I
playoffs.
that winning
Nothing but
goal,
credit.
I was happy to see that.
Yeah.
We covering hockey in Edmonton have seen the very best of Brett Kulak, and it's pretty damn hard to cheer against him.
Yeah. Kurt, let's leave it there. It's a late night for both of us here, but that was a
It
good
was
talk, and
it was a great list, David. Well constructed.
I just really appreciated Kris Knoblauch when he was here as a coach. I think he was so close, and that is a tough thing, that injury, because just think of all, like, even like if they had got to the Western Conference Final, I think he might have held on to his job. Like if they had beat Anaheim and then beat Vegas.
Yeah, the first round exit is kind of the death knoll, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tough way to
I
go out, but I
As you
think
know,
we'll,
I had lots of respect for Kris. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll land on his feet. I'm sorry it ended this way, but I don't disagree with the decision ultimately.
Kurt, thanks for talking tonight.
Thanks, David.